Okay, so I'm just gonna start off by saying that I never actually read the manga adaptation of Jujutsu Kaisen Zero, so I kind of went in with no expectations of anything, or no, you know, with no expectation of really a good adaptation because I didn't know what a good adaptation was supposed to be. I have been told since then that this is a good adaptation, that it in fact does expand on the things that were already kind of stated in the one shot, because the one shot kind of happened before the actual Jujutsu Kaisen manga. So the movie kind of took the time to flesh out some stuff, add some characters that weren't there in the original one shot, add its fair share of fan service. I have no say on that, but I'm happy for people who read the manga and think that this is better. I think this is a great movie without the manga adaptation influence on me. I just think this is a good movie, a great movie. You don't need to really have any understanding of Jujutsu Kaisen. You can go into this movie never having seen Jujutsu Kaisen, and you'll understand some things you will miss out on, some characters that appear that are like clearly fan servicey. You will obviously miss out on that. You won't know who they are. You won't understand why they get like such little showtime, but they still get that little bit of showtime. You won't necessarily understand why, but it won't ruin your experience or anything. It's still a great movie that is low-key standalone. And the main character, Yuta, is like, I want to say almost my favorite character at this point in Jujutsu. This movie makes me like love him so much. I love the main three, Yuji, Megumi, and Nobara. I really like them. I like Gojo as well, but there's something about Yuta's story, how tragic it is, how sad it is. I really like it, and I'm not gonna delve into spoilers or anything like that, but the twist at the end of his story and how his whole kind of condition developed and kind of ended up resolving itself is just it's so cool to me. It's so cool, and to me, what's really important with these kind of characters like Yuta is that his story is kind of wrapped up, or at least the part of the story that was in Jujutsu Kaisen Zero is wrapped up, but it opens up so much more. Like you think it's one thing that like he has this big problem, he has to get it resolved, he gets it resolved by the end. You think it's this big thing, and then you realize that he resolved this problem, and now there's so much more going on with the character, and I love that about him. And he's just so likable in this movie. He's like the typical shy guy, who doesn't want to be a burden. He doesn't want to get in people's way to the extent where like he'd rather just remove himself from the equation completely. And that's not spoiler, this is pretty much stated right off the gate. So he just really wants to remove himself from the equation. Then you kind of see him kind of gain his confidence, become dependable person. It's a very heartwarming story about a character who goes from nothing, or basically not wanting to be anything, to a character that becomes I'm not gonna say fully fleshed out, semi-fleshed out, or at least is in a state where he can go into higher levels of character development, as opposed to just being a stagnant character who doesn't want to be anything at all. And I really appreciate how the movie does that. And not only his story, but his relationship with Rika, his love interest, I guess you could call it. It's kind of weird because they were kids, but it's basically his love interest. They were promised to be together forever, and shit happens, it doesn't go that way. There's a whole thing with that throughout the whole movie, and I just loved that whole relationship. And some people might find it weird in the theater that I was in. There was some laughter at some points that I definitely understand why. To me, it wasn't, I was like too into the story to like really laugh at that moment, because I understood what the author was going for. Not that other people didn't, but like I understood what they were going for with the imagery that they were putting out there, although it definitely might have seemed funny. But I get it, I get what they were doing, and I appreciate it, to be honest. And this is Jujutsu. If you've seen the first season, the outcome of that relationship is tragic, as so many other things are in this show. It's really tragic, but without spoiling anything, it's handled very well, the end of that relationship, I mean, and it hits very hard. This movie is not, it doesn't spend the bulk of it on that relationship. It comes back, it spends some time on it, leaves, comes back to it, but it really manages to make you care about these characters in the short length that it has. These characters that you've never met before, or at least if you haven't read the manga, these characters that you've never met before, you will probably end up caring about them, because the relationship, it feels very genuine, and it's very cute, it's very pure. It's a very pure relationship. I think that's why it hits so hard when it gets, to its conclusion. Outside of Yuta, there's a lot of characters that get much more screen time than they have in the first season of Jujutsu. Obviously, you had to introduce Yuji, you had to introduce Sukuna, you had to introduce so many concepts in the first season that you didn't really have time to flesh out people like Geto, or obviously we got Gojo, but we get more of Gojo, we get more of Maki, Panda, and Inumaki. You get like so much more about characters that you might have liked. I'm mostly speaking about the three, Panda, Inumaki, and Maki. You get so much more of them when you got already some in the first season. You get much more, and honestly, while I liked them before, I love them now, because you get just more time with them, even Geto, because in the first season you barely see Geto. It's mostly just Mahito that's like the antagonist of that season, and Geto is kind of a background antagonist, right, that I'm sure will be more important later, but for now it's all about Mahito. And it was cool to see more of Geto and how devoted to his goal he is. Also, he's literally Frieza, but I guess we're not gonna talk about that. He's Frieza, but more tolerant Frieza. But yeah, we got some more screen time for other characters too, without going into any spoilers. Just some characters that honestly didn't add anything to the story, but it was fan service. I'm happy to see fan service. I'm always cool with fan service as long as it's done responsibly. The movie is not full of fan service, so when it's there, it's cool. It's just like a cool, nod. If you've seen season 1, good for you. Here are some characters you like. If you haven't, it's cool. Don't even worry about it. This lasts like 10 seconds. It doesn't matter. I was a fan of it. Another thing I was a fan of, the animation was so fucking smooth. The first season was hella smooth, and so was this movie, man. If I had to compare it to something, I can't even say Demon Slayer, because it's two different styles of animation, but it flows the same. It's very, very smooth. It's not choppy, you know what I mean? Like, it's a very flowy way of animating things, and it's like throughout. There's no like bad patches of animation. There's nothing. They really did their thing on this, bro. It's crazy. The Jujutsu Kaisen and Demon Slayer have animation on lock, and they really, really display their talents in this movie. If I had to say one gripe maybe with the movie, is that it moves a little bit fast in between the middle and the final act. And by a little bit fast, I mean it jumps from the middle to the final act within 5 seconds, but it's understandable in the movie. I'm not going to spoil it, but it's understandable why it does that. But Yuta's progression is very, very quick, let's say. They don't waste time on it. You're supposed to just believe that this dude is like, he's above. And they make it very clear that he is right off the gate, that he's next level. He's a next level curse. But it's a little jarring in the middle that jump happens through time, but definitely not enough to ruin the movie. Definitely not even enough to throw me off. It's just something that I realized in hindsight. But this movie was so good, honestly, I couldn't care less about little problems like that. Definitely a must watch.